This is Good Friday. And there's two things that generally happen on Good Friday that I'd like us to avoid this year. One is rushing through to get to Easter. And quite honestly, I've been guilty of it myself, setting up the whole Holy Week with the understanding that Easter's coming at the end. The other thing that people do, and I've heard horror stories from children who've been traumatized by this, is they really push the violent aspect of Good Friday. Children encouraged to shout, "Crucify him, crucify him." That's horrible for children. It's not great for adults either, but absolutely traumatic experience. And both of them fail to take into account what Good Friday is about. Good Friday is not just about the violence that killed Jesus. Good Friday is about us being witness to something that is transformative, that we don't understand where it's going to go, but we are compelled to watch it. Almost like watching a car wreck or a train wreck. We can't turn away. We've got to be part of the experience and what is happening in it. So that's the kind of attitude and framework and emotionality I want you to pull together as we go through Good Friday and the reflection. And again, I ask you to be in first century Palestine. Smell the smells. Hear the sounds. Do you hear the dogs barking? Do you smell the jasmine? Are you brushing up against thick woolen cloaks? Are you brushing up against people who have needed to bathe for quite some time and they haven't yet? Are you walking through the crowd or are you walking off alone? Because there's action happening around Pilate's castle today. You have been walking this entire Holy Week from the sidelines, watching every moment of it. You heard Jesus being beaten last evening. Today, we're moving to another trial, a very public trial. Whereas the private trial that the Pharisees and the Sadducees had with Jesus was all about blasphemy. The very public trial is about treason and about revolt and about armed insurrection. And you stand in the crowd watching. Maybe you're too young to understand what is going on here. And you're scared and you don't want to be anywhere near this. Maybe you're old enough to have traveled and know a thing or two about life, and you recognize what's going on in front of you is classic Roman theater. Don't let anyone try to convince you or each other that Pilate really is chagrined in having to make this choice. You know Pilate has an awful reputation. He almost likes inflicting pain on others. He has no use for the Hebrew community, and if it didn't have an agreement with Rome, he would probably roll all over it, and you know that. And you were watching as he puts up this option. Do you want Barabbas or do you want Jesus? Now, you've traveled or you've heard about the games in the Colosseums. You know that the most beaten gladiator, the one who is struggling, the one who wasn't quite killed in the ring, is usually the one chosen to die. This has nothing to do with blasphemy. That was the Pharisees' issue. And yeah, they might be using the Romans as their political arm, but quite honestly, the Romans are using the Pharisees to do a lot of their dirty work. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees don't want to acknowledge that. But as you stand in the crowd, you cannot miss what is going on. As the Pharisees kind of fade into the crowd and away to the edge, and the Sadducees have already left, and the temple people are starting to realize we've started something we don't control anymore. And you watch Pilate just say, what do I do? It's up to the crowd. It's my wonderful privilege to give you the option of freeing a prisoner. Here we have two equal prisoners. We have Barabbas, who we know caused political insurrection. And here we have Jesus, who not only has committed or encouraged what potentially could be political insurrection, but he's using God to do it, like he is the chosen one. Look, I've even asked him, are you the Son of God? And all he can say is, that's who you say I am. Jesus isn't defending himself. And that's kind of curious to you too, because Jesus hasn't defended himself in anything you've watched in the last little while. It's like he knows this has got to happen. He's not thrilled about it. You can see in his face. He must be in obvious pain because he's not standing up tall. The blood is dripping down from his face where the crown of thorns has been shoved on him. You can see the bruises that have formed from last night's beating. But he's still standing there, alone. All of the men who've been with him this entire week are gone. You don't see any of them here. If you look around the crowd, you see some of the women who were part of the meal last night. One woman in particular really gets your attention. She's standing with some older friends, and they have their arm around her, and her tears are falling down her face as she is watching what's going on. And you know this is his mother. She is watching, she is not intervening, because she knows something, or you suspect she knows something. And she's watching in absolute agony as her son is subjected to this public torment, public ridicule. And Barabbas puts out, "What do you want to do?" And you look around, and some of the crowd starts yelling, "Crucify him." Not all of them do. Some are just as horrified as you are. But there's enough people yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him." Where do they come from that they want to see this person put to death? He hasn't said or done anything outside of the temple. He has not once, aside from riding on that donkey, made any public pronouncement that he is going to be the new king. And yet, everybody in authority is scared of him. They want him gone. It doesn't make sense to you. Or maybe it does. People are threatened. And they also want to protect their self-interest. You know it would take nothing for Rome to roll over this whole thing, ruin Passover, and they wouldn't care. The priests you want to hold in a slightly better light. They're trying to preserve their authority within Jerusalem and their holy days. But you still cannot get past the willingness to be part of this spectacle and charade. So you watch helplessly as people around you are yelling, "Crucify him." And Pilate goes through the ritual washing of his hands. He's done with it. He wants no responsibility. You can't help but miss the smirk on the corner of his mouth as he turns away and walks from the crowd. Barabbas will be freed. You know he's going to be arrested again. He'll probably be executed next week. But the theater has happened. Now Jesus is condemned publicly. There's no way out of it. And no one came to his defense. He is led from the down, put into a purple cloak, which is the symbol of royalty in the Roman world. More crowns are put on his head. More bleeding happens, and people mock him and ridicule him, and he doesn't say anything. And he is led towards the cross that will be the source of his execution. And in a humiliation that only the Romans seem to be able to give, they are forcing him to carry the instrument of his own death. And you watch this as the crowd continues to turn. The energy in the crowd is still vile. It is still wanting this spectacle. Maybe they think it won't actually end with his death. Theater at Passover is not unknown. But you know better. You've seen all week how much hatred some people have developed for Jesus. The fear that is in his power. Even though he's just a regular looking man to you, he has already attracted you to him. There is something there, something he's been saying that really, really matters to you. It touches your heart. You cannot walk away. And so you walk closer to where the women are crying and following behind. And as Jesus stumbles when he can't carry his cross, another man is pulled out of the crowd, and he now is carrying the cross. He looks terrified too. He has no idea that if he gets there, if he's going to be strung up too, right beside Jesus. But he doesn't walk away, he still does it. And together they leave through the west gate of the city and up to the hill of Golgotha. And you watch part of the crowd as it moves forward. You watch as they nail him to the cross, tie his arms there, put a placard above his head that says King of the Jews. You see him, seeing him stripped of the gold, of the purple robe and of the crown, his own meager clothes thrown back on him. And he is put up there with two other criminals that had been condemned a few weeks earlier. Even they mock him. If you're so powerful, get off the cross. Go down there. You're the Son of God, right? So why should this bother you? You can end this at any time. The heckling from the ground continues, and Jesus doesn't say a word. He's offered wine laced with drugs to try to dull the pain, and he refuses it. Slowly, people leave. The Pharisees, the Sadducees that were left in the crowd, they've finished their mocking, they've moved on. Maybe to do a whole lot of reflection as to the part they played in this and whether or not they should have gone this far. Maybe some of them are grateful that the threat they perceive is gone. But you have a feeling that threat is still really present in this crowd. More and more leave. And it's just you and a few dozen others, as well as the women who've been watching from a distance this entire time. And eventually he calls out, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they do." Only he does it in Aramaic. And some of those traveling in from other lands don't recognize what he's saying, and they think, "Oh, the Eloi, he's calling for Elijah to come save him." And you know, that's not Elijah he's asking for. He's talking to God. God, please forgive people for what they have done. He dies. You know the moment his whole body exhales and falls, hanging limply on the ropes. You've been a witness to this entire time. The women completely break down at this point in time. Others have left. The show's over. And you and several others now are left watching as Jesus' body is lowered to the ground. But not before one of the guards says, "Oh, he really is King of the Jews." Not sympathetically, but with great sarcasm. And it is done.